Hi, and welcome to CommieCast, the podcast that talks about the issues that matters to you. Today we're talking about the Royal Mail and the Post Office. Let's do a quick bit of introduction first here to why this matters and actually why it's been pretty important to the development of our economy and society today. Uh, this all began actually with Charles I, like many things do. He had an altercation with Parliament over funding his rather expensive wars, and he had to think of new ways to make money other than taxation. He came up with the idea of widening the Royal Mail, which had then only served the royal family and high-ranking public officials. In 1635, when this decree was signed, a majority of the British population was either illiterate or had no real need for such a post service. Generations of families lived and died in the same villages and towns. All that would change with the Industrial Revolution. By 1840, literacy was greater and there was more demand among individuals to use mail as more people moved to the city. Industry also had more demand for mail services too. By this time, the postal system was running a deficit, largely due to the fact that the recipient paid postage and many people were rejecting letters. It wasn't a sustainable business model. The very idea of charging for postage in advance came from this realization around 1840. They needed some sort of proof that the sender had paid, so the Royal Mail introduced two methods, each costing a single penny: postage stamps and prepaid envelopes. This revolutionised the postal service, not just here but globally. In 2016, early British stamps and envelopes featured in an exhibition in the United States National Post Museum. The curator explained the importance thus. The reform of the mail was seen as a tool to all other social reforms, enabling proponents for women's suffrage, temperance, and vegetarianism to spread their messages. He actually said anti-slavery in the US was tied to the cheap postage movement. The Postal Service is a democratizing institution and the only other essentially Victorian technology we still use besides railroads. The Post Office has also played a vital role as a pioneer and major user of all systems of transport as each were developed. Horse-drawn coaches, steamboat, canals, and railroads. Later on, the airlines, motor vehicles. It also helps subsidize the development of these means of transport. It remains a very important industry. Without the post, no online shopping. And of course, no mass delivery of COVID test kits as we had during the very dark days of the pandemic. The Royal Mail employs nearly 160,000 people. The post office has 11,500 branches, the largest retail franchise network in Europe. So, a long way of saying the post office, the Royal Mail matters. First of here, we have Postal Worker 1. The guys don't want to use their names for various reasons attached with disciplinary procedures in the Postal Service. So I'm going to refer to our first guest here as Postal Worker 1. Please tell me about the differences between the Post Office and the Royal Mail, because I'm not sure that's widely understood. Then give me the three biggest negative impacts of privatisation so far for customers and for employees. And in the interest of balance, any positive impact that you can think of deriving from privatisation. Over to you, Postal Worker 1, and give us a brief intro about yourself.
Hello, Stuart. So I'm a postal worker. I've been a postal worker for over 30 years. I work in delivery. I've done all kinds of deliveries, walking, driving, the trolleys that you see us pushing around. So like I say, I'm a very experienced. I'm a CWU rep as well. So that's me in a nutshell. So to answer your question, Stuart, the Post Office and Royal Mail, a lot of people get these two mixed up, or they think that they're the same thing. So the Post Office, the biggest difference between the two, of course, is the Post Office is still a public business and Royal Mail is privately owned. So the Post Office, the dispute, they're in dispute as well, and they have already taken strike action. Royal Mail staff haven't as yet. Although, as we all saw last week, a fantastic ballot result. I think it was 97.6% yes vote, which is a truly stunning vote. I think you'll agree on that. So if we start with the post office, like I say, it's still owned by the public, and the post office is what used to be the big buildings in the centre of most towns, where you'd go and you'd get your tax or your passports, drop your parcels off, that kind of thing. Although it's a public business, it has been under relentless attack in the last few years, and we've all seen what's happened to that. In most cases, those lovely big buildings have been sold off, and you'll now find your post office counter probably stuck at the back of somewhere like WH Smith, not very accessible. And it's the terms and conditions of the workforce have been absolutely decimated. You've lost a loyal, long-serving staff there, and they've been replaced with 0-hour contracts, minimum wage people. So that's your post office as it is at the moment. Like I say, they're still in dispute, and they've been fighting constantly for the last few years over their terms and conditions, backed up by obviously the CW, and some of the postal workers in the CW have been involved in that campaign. Royal Mail is the part that was privatised. But let's be clear about this. When we say Royal Mail was privatised, the profitable part, or what they thought was the profitable part of Royal Mail, is what was privatised. What wasn't privatised was the pension deficit. That remains the responsibility of the taxpayer. So without removing that burden, Royal Mail would never have been privatised, because no shareholder, no investor is going to invest in a company that is that much in debt. So as a taxpayer, you are still responsible for the debt, which was created by the government giving Royal Mail a 19-year holiday on their payments into the pensions. So Royal Mail privatisation, the negative impacts from Royal Mail privatisation, you asked for 3. I've given you 1 already there. I'm going to give you another 3. The one I gave you obviously was about the pensions. We all know the cost of stamps, the price rises that have gone through the roof. That is massively negative, and it affects how much people use. And we've seen the level of competition, constantly driving prices higher and higher. Prices Royal Mail out of the market. The level of service is another massive negative impact. Now, when I started 30 odd years ago, it was perfectly feasible for you to be able to post a letter at Hub State in the morning in your own town, if it was addressed to an address in your own town, and for that letter to be delivered maybe 2 or 3 hours later, the same day, for no extra cost, and that was perfectly feasible. Today, we see you only need to Google some of the local press all over the country. You'll see complaints about whole streets not being delivered, whole villages not being delivered for days on end. The staff shortages and the way that the business is run leads to large sections not being done when they should be. So that's another one. The third one, and I don't know whether you'll agree with this, but for me, it's removed a real vital part of our communities. The postal worker was trusted. I'll give you another example. When I started, we'd empty the post boxes, and you'd have a big bunch of keys to go around, empty the post boxes while you were delivering. Also, you'd find on a lot of those bunch of keys, you'd find house keys, and postmen would literally let themselves into people's houses, elderly people, to check on them. I can remember being asked if I'd pick up a pint of milk on the way past the shop and bring it back, which we did. So you've lost that real community link. That postman was somebody who many people, that maybe the only person they spoke to. It was somebody they recognised. It was the same postman every day for years and years. Personal friendships were built. So for me, that is a massive negative impact, that we've lost that community aspect to what we do.
Mate, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I recognise what you say. Around my little neighbourhood, when I first came here, many decades ago now, the post guy, Frank, was part of the community, and that's now gone completely. Yeah, but we get on with the post people, but we see him for 2-3 days, then you don't see him again for weeks and months. So the whole thing has changed. I'm probably able to guess the answer to this question. Any positive elements to privatisation?
Now, you may not believe it, but I really, really have thought about this, and the answer is simply no. I really cannot think of a positive impact of privatisation, other than if you're a shareholder, of course. If you're a shareholder, then there's massive positive impact. You know, you're making huge sums of money off the back of working people. But other than that, for the average man in the street, I don't see any positive impact at all.
Okay. Postal Worker 2, thanks very much for joining us. Giving us a quick introduction to yourself there.
Okay, thank you for that, Stuart. So for me, 34 years employed by Royal Mail, been a CMA stroke Unite rep, health and safety, pensions champion, and I was the branch chairman. I recently took voluntary redundancy back in the mid-May period. But quirkiness as it is, I have been back working for Royal Mail on the ground as a delivery driver for an agency. So I'm back, done the full circle. Okay.
Okay, man, that's clearly a lot of experience. So Postal Worker 2, sorry to have to use these names, guys. Give us your perspective on that first question, please.
If we can go back to the lib, or should we call it the condemn, back in 2010-ish, it was actually the Lib Dems that pushed forward for the privatisation of Royal Mail. There was a business secretary, I believe his name was Vince Cable at the time.
What was the Labour Party's attitude towards privatisation?
I believe the Labour Party don't fully realise what is going on, what's happened and what is going on with the Royal Mail. Bit like yourself, when we talk about Royal Mail, straight away people think, oh, the post office down the high street. It's two totally different entities. And I think they struggle to realise what's going on and the importance of what happened.
Okay, mate, thanks very much indeed. Okay, back over to you, Postal Worker 1. From a trade union point of view, what are the current campaign plans regarding pay? And politically, how do you intend to further the fight against privatisation?
Okay, well, obviously I mentioned earlier on, we're all, I'm sure everyone's aware of the ballot result last week, the 97.6%. So that's the first thing to say. You know, that CWU balloted their members immediately over this. While we were just shortly before they began the ballot, Royal Mail imposed a 2% pay rise on us, which, to give you some context, is about £10 a week for your average postal worker, and that's been imposed on us. We've had no choice in that. The real important thing that I really want to get across here is the ballot last week was strictly on pay. So the CWU, aware of what's happening with the cost of living crisis, went in nice and early to the company. We're due our pay rise on April the 1st. So CWU went in nice and early with the intentions of getting this all sorted by April the 1st. So there was no long drag. There's a history of that in pay deals in Royal Mail where they drag on and on for months. We end up getting the back pay as you do. But the CWU were very conscious of what people are going through and wanted this pay deal sorted out by April 1st. So they approached Royal Mail in plenty of time. Royal Mail, from what I understand, weren't interested really in negotiating and strang the thing along. So despite the union's best attempts to get it sorted, it came to the ballot and the 2% was imposed shortly before the ballot. The reason I'm making this very clear about the ballot being strictly on pay is because the company are trying to link any pay rise to change. Now, there's already a change agreement in place between the union and the company, which, in my opinion, has been incredibly successful. The union have gone out of their way to make this deal work. And I'll be honest here, a lot of the times the workforce don't like the deal. You know, it's more work, it's working faster, it's technology coming in, it's stuff like that. But that part of it is already in place. And to give you some context and an idea, you know, just over a year ago, Royal Mail were forecasting a £600 million loss. Yeah, their last profits were £700 million. So in just over a year, postal workers, let's be clear, it's postal workers doing this, have driven £1 billion turnaround within the company's fortunes. Okay, so for me, that proves that the agreement in place on change is working. It's forced £1 billion turnaround. And like I say, despite the fact that many postal workers will tell you they're not happy about that deal. So that's why that's the first ballot. CW have now announced that there'll be a second ballot starting this week, and that will deal with change, because Royal Mail have now announced the kind of changes that they want to see. This will lead to working 1 in 4 Sundays. This will lead to annualized hours. So in the winter, which is our busier period, the summer it's not so busy. In the winter, you could be working up to 44 hours a week. Again, we work 37 hours at the moment. In the summer, it could be 32 hours. Later starting times, pushing our starting times back even more, which is a complaint that we hear a lot as postal workers. I remember when you were around here at 7 o'clock in the morning delivering my post. We're not now, because many of us don't start work till that time, and we spend a couple of hours every day in the office preparing the mail. So they want to push the times back. They want in the winter, so that you're then looking at maybe a 12-13 hour day in the winter. Now, if you're not starting till 8 o'clock in the morning, that's an 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock finish at the darkest time of year. So, and the coldest time of year, it's the time you don't want to be out there. They want to be able to have the facility to flex you up and down as they wish. They're saying that they'll give between 4 and 10 weeks notice in change of your shift pattern. Now, I myself am a single father with 2 young children, both at school. Now, it doesn't matter how much notice Royal Mail give me of changing my finishing time, my school pickup time doesn't change. The school isn't going to flex up and down with me. So there's no thought to family life, that kind of thing with this. We'll just tell you to work whenever we want you to work. So they're the kind of changes that Royal Mail are looking for. So this is what the CW is now balloting for. So that will give us 2 active ballots, hopefully. One will be on pay, one will be on change. So we'll be able to negotiate on both, because at the moment, because the first ballot was strictly about pay, if we then take industrial action over change, Royal Mail will just take us to court, and the ballot will be thrown out because it's not what we balloted for. So we can only, on the first one, we can only negotiate on pay. So that's the reason for a second ballot, and hopefully we'll see a similar result.
To you, postal worker too, a very good description from your colleague there about the main issues we're facing right now. The RMT have fought quite a successful campaign politically, as well as from a trade union point of view. What plans do you have, if any, to emulate that success?
So, especially because although with CMA, we are part of the Unite the Union, we're in there. Sharon Graham is very much aware of what's going on. We've got 100% support from her. We've been given a full-time officer to lead us through this, to make sure we're getting through all these hoops. There's Kate Osborne, she's Labour MP. She is actually raising this in the House for both unions, because she's got an interest in Royal Mail, and the people that work for Royal Mail have been treated fairly and equally. So there has been a lot of interest. There's been a campaign, more of a social media campaign, pushing out the posters. It'll be more interesting as and when this industrial action, if it is going to take place, what the impact will be. So at the moment, we are where we are, but there is support there, Stuart.
Postal Worker 1, what's your view?
I think the stuff that the comms team of CWU are doing are absolutely fantastic. And you touched briefly on the RMT and Mick Lynch and Eddie Dempsey. Fantastic to see them on there and talking about class as well, and what this is. Let's be clear, this is an attack on our class, isn't it? And to hear trade union leaders speaking like that. Now, Dave Ward has also been on national TV speaking in the same terms, making it clear that this is a class attack. It's not just an attack on one industry. As we're seeing, you're seeing the rail workers, the mail, the doctors, the nurses, the firemen, the barristers of all people, the civil servants. You're seeing all of these groups of people balloting. All right. So I think what needs to happen, and I think what is happening, are the unions are coming together and they're pooling their resources. We're all after the same thing. You know, our fight is your fight. It's got to be the motto of all the unions. So yeah, politically, I think you'll see a lot of movement with all the unions together, not a single union doing it on their own.
That's good to hear, because it's actually massively important. The success of the RMT, and particularly McLynch, has been a really good example of that. The unions pulling together. Obviously, the Communist Party is 100% behind you guys. What's the Labour Party's position here?
Labour Party's position, Postal Worker 2 touched on it earlier, under Jeremy Corbyn, the 2017 and 2019 manifestos, it was made very clear that Royal Mail would be renationalised. And indeed, Keir Starmer himself, during the leadership campaign, continued that pledge and said that he would renationalise vital industries. We all know what's happened since then. They've backtracked. They've refused to commit to supporting workers. You know, he's even issued bans on his front bench being on picket lines with workers, which is, for me, is totally shameful. You're the Labour Party. Your place is on the picket line with the working class fighting alongside us. So you ask me what I think. Labour have no interest in renationalisation. Labour are in hock to the rich just as much as the Conservatives are, and there's no way they're going to upset their backers and their donators by coming around and saying, actually, we're going to renationalise these industries. So the simple answer is, I don't think they've got anything.
So are you saying that Starmer was maybe somewhat less than sincere when he made those commitments early on? You sound like a bit of a lefty, damn it. Briefly for us, summarise the Communist Party's position on nationalisation.
Well, the Communist Party's position on nationalisation, we're running a rail and mail campaign as we speak. There's posters around which have been on the picket lines. You know, renationalisation. We also understand and, you know, have an insight into exactly why these companies are privatised and just where the profit goes into these hedge funds, investment banks, the rich. None of this money comes back into our economy. None of it's circulated in our economy. It's all stashed away out of reach of the tax man. So the CP, obviously, the Communist Party, we obviously campaign on renationalisation of all our vital industries. And it's very important to understand that this is a wider context of what's going on here. We need to have renationalisation of not just rail and mail, but energy, water, all these things that are vital to a successful society need to be under the control of the government, of the people, you know, not the rich, under the control of the people and run for the benefit of the people. You saw the importance of Royal Mail during the pandemic. You know, we were key workers. We went to work every single day. And now at the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't know what was happening. We didn't know whether hundreds of thousands of people were going to drop dead in the street, but we went to work. We kept the communities running. We kept our communities linked together in the way that we should. And that's something that you can't put a price on. So that is something that should be a nationalised company and run for the benefit of people, not for shareholders.
I'm probably accurate in saying that over the last couple of years and into 2022, your real wages have fallen, which is a disgrace. Real wages for people in the public sector, I think, have fallen by 4.2% this year. And it was public sector workers, along with you guys in the Royal Mail, that helped keep the country going during the pandemic. But all the benefits of that work is going to the private sector. When you look at the energy industries, the price increases they're putting in place to maintain their profitability are screwing everybody, not just retail customers, but small businesses too, and having a knock-on inflationary effect. Sorry, I can get quite evangelical about this. Postal Worker 1, I think we all agree that privatisation has been a failure, and that nationalisation is essential to cure the problems in this industry. A two-part question for you. How important do you think that worker participation is going to be in the constitution of the new entity? And broadly speaking, how would you like the industry to look post a successful nationalisation, i.e., what would a good nationalisation look like?
Okay, well, let's go the first bit with the work participation. Like I say, I've worked over 30 years for a company. Now, when I started, people were incredibly proud to work for Royal Mail. You know, the uniform, the badges, everything. I can remember some of the older colleagues when I started. They would come in, they would still be wearing the peak cap with the crown, and the shoes were polished so you could see your face in them. That was, you know, there was a real pride in what you did. Obviously, reuniting the post office and Royal Mail can only benefit both companies, and it would provide good jobs, really good long-term jobs that people take a pride in with a good wage. So that's what I'd say from the worker side of things. From what I would like to see from the renationalised company, quite simply, would be a higher level of service to start with. You know, we've seen the service decline. So to get back to what we had before, a real high level of service that people take pride in. You know, the two companies together, there's so much they could offer. You know, you could offer banking through the post office, you know, with low-cost business loans to local businesses and stuff like that, savings accounts. Let's remember, it's not that long ago where the post office was the hub of the community, where people would meet, chat while they were cashing their gyros. So I'd like to see that kind of thing coming back. But then, you know, we look at where we are now. You know, there could be an internet provider, a proper internet provider, you know, providing a nationalised internet for everybody, a nationalised mobile phone network. We have the technology to do all of this. You know, parcel collections, we see them everywhere, with people dropping them off wherever they can and having them delivered wherever they can. We can do that better than anyone else. You know, we've got the largest fleet in the country. All right, we could basically transport anything. You know, whatever is transported by haulage now, we could do that as a nationalised company, again, with well-paid jobs for lorry drivers and things like that, really providing that what's needed for workers at the moment, real security, long-term security, well-paid jobs. You know, we go to every single address in the country, or we can do 6 days a week. You know, we're trusted members of the community. We've got real in-depth local knowledge. You know, so we notice if Mrs. Smith hasn't been around for a few days, and we can check on her. It's that level of, you know, taking away the need for profit would give postal workers more time to really do that important community work that, you know, would really bond the company to the people of the country and make it something that they could be really proud of. You know, one of the things that postal workers did during the pandemic, not only did we work and not only did we drive huge profits for the company, but we rebuilt the reputation of Royal Mail during the pandemic. You know, people really realised how important Royal Mail was to their community. You know, when you couldn't leave your house for any reason other than an hour's exercise a day or to go shopping once a week, if there was anything that you'd forgotten, you ordered it online and Royal Mail brought it to you. And that really, I think it brought it back into focus for a lot of people, just how important a service it is to people. And it's a community service. You know, it's for our communities. So that's what I would like to see, a community-based company doing stuff nationalised for everybody, for the benefit of everybody.
I think what you're talking about there is interesting, because this could certainly have a major role in revitalising the economy. And when you talk about a proper nationalised internet service with high quality internet available for everybody, I think that's a major objective, and I can't see it happening under privatisation, to be honest. I think also the post office, correct me if I'm wrong here, but with that size of network, if you get people going back to the post office branches, then you can help revitalise the high street. So I think there's all sorts of good things to happen here. Postal Worker 2 spoke about the new service being slightly hamstrung by some service obligations compared to some private provider. How would you handle that?
Personally, I would keep them. It's what makes Royal Mail different. You know, the fact that we have to go to these places. You know, we can't skip a place because it's not profitable. You know, a lot of these companies that Postal Worker 2 referred to, they cherry pick in the city centres where it's easy to deliver mail. You know, you can go from one business to the other really quickly. Royal Mail, you can send a letter from Land's End to John O'Groats and it costs you the same price. There's no price difference between sending a letter to the next street to sending a letter to the other side of the country. And that's an important thing for that Royal Mail should keep. So I believe that the universal service obligation, as it's called, should be kept. The fact that the company has to do that is a very, very important thing that we should not lose sight of. And it's being constantly attacked because it's not profitable in that kind of sense. But it's vital to our communities. It's vital that you can get a letter from one end of the country to the other, if that's where your family lives, for that one flat rate. You don't have to pay a huge fee to send that letter. So for me, the universal service obligation should certainly stay, and it should certainly be a big basis of the new company.
Okay, Postal Worker 2. Give us some closing remarks, as we have to finish here quite quickly, and let us know anything that our listeners can do to help.
I'll go back over a couple of points from Postal Worker 1. Bringing back all the different factions of Royal Mail. So Post Office, for years, privatisation, it's been breaking down over the years, trying to break up the different aspects of the company. We need to come back together. Going back to the internet, I mean, Royal Mail, we are the internet, but we're the face of the internet. We are the ones at the door. Whatever it is that if you've ordered a parcel, if you want a letter delivered, we're going to be there. We're going to be handing that letter over to you. So the way I look at it, we're the face of the internet, and that is so important. People do rely on us. We've got the integrity, we've got the security. I'm not fishing about in the back of the boot of my car just trying to find a parcel for someone and then going to the house and then just deciding, oh, no answer, I'm going to throw it over the back garden. We don't operate like that. And the people within Royal Mail, managers, frontline workers, as Postal Worker 1 says, we are proud. We know what we're handling. We're handling people's mail. We are part of the infrastructure of this society. At the beginning, Stuart, you alluded to rail, shipping, energy. It's communication. This is how we communicate with each other. We're an integral part of that, and we will be going forward.
Okay, mate, and how can our listeners help?
Social media is going to be really, really important on this one. I think the CW, because of the strength of numbers, I think it's going to be quite obvious what's going on with their campaigns. Take note of it. Bit like the RMT, listen to what the union reps are saying. I mean, Mick Lynch, he's tearing the media apart. I've got no doubt Dave Ward can do just as much of a good job. We've got Sharon Graham from Unite. Don't just listen to the mainstream media. I don't know the last time I watched BBC News. I can't stand it. But obviously people are out there. And we need every opportunity to be out there and telling people this is what is really happening.
Okay, mate, and just on that last point you made there, read the Morning Star and recommend the Morning Star to other people, because there are many issues going around just now. Inflation, Ukraine, the Morning Star is the only place where you'll get any sense. Okay, Postal Worker 1, over to you. Closing remarks and any further comments on how we can all help.
Well, I'd just like to say that Royal Mail and / the Post Office, it's been around for 500 years, okay? It's embedded deeply in our national culture. It's embedded deeply in our communities. We're trusted. One thing I haven't mentioned that I did mean to mention is, the level of trust. When I started, you had to sign the Official Secrets Act. That's the level of trust that there is in this company, you see. And very basically, in the right hands and run the right way with the right vision, this company could be an incredible and important asset to the entire country. So that would be my closing remarks on that. In terms of what those of you listening can do to support your local postie, speak to your local postie. We're all friendly people, well, most of us. We're all up for a chat. So speak to your local postie, ask what's going on in their area and what you can do to help. Obviously, come along, speak to your friends and family as well, and And when you hear this stuff, as we will hear it, greedy postmen want more money, la la la. We hear it with the train drivers. You know, challenge that. You know, speak to your local postie, get the facts. And when you hear people saying that, if it's your local pub or your local, challenge them. Say, no. This is what's actually going on. You know. And one thing I would say is come down to the picket lines, show your support. You know, unlike the RMT. And this is not a criticism of them, of course, but unlike the RMT, you're going to see a picket line in just about every town with a CWU because we have an office in every single town. So it won't be far away from you. Come down, say hello, offer your support to us. And there's a tradition with the CWU and its picket lines because of the early morning starts, which they're trying to get rid of. We normally have breakfast. So if you're really lucky, you might even get a free breakfast if you come down to the picket line. So come down, say hello, and you'll be more than welcome down there. And we'd love to have your support. And I'd just also like to say, all the other workers out there that are fighting exactly the same fight, the CWU stands squarely with you. Okay, we send our solidarity to all our brothers and sisters fighting this fight, and we'll be there till the very end alongside you.
Okay, mate, very well said. Thanks very much indeed. One of the reasons why I made that somewhat lengthy introduction was to emphasise the importance of the postal service to the development of the economy and to people in general. And I think that, yeah, you've actually made the point, both of you, it remains a very important industry. Thank you very much for coming here, and I will look forward to speaking to you guys maybe a couple of months down the track when we're talking about the outcome of a successful strike. In the meantime, thank you very much for listening. We are anti-fascist, anti-racist, anti-capitalist, and very much anti-privatisation, but pro the working class. This has been CommieCast. Thank you very much indeed. Good night.